What's going on, guys? Happy New Year. The year's 2024, and we've got a brand new season kicking off tomorrow with Skarr and Planet Hulk. This season's going to be crazy with tech cards and a lot of new flavors to archetypes. Today, Alex and I are going to break down every single card and give our early ratings and combos and how we think they're going to fit into Marvel Snap. We're going to talk about that all today and more on this New Year's Day episode of the Snapchat. And as always, I am joined by Mr. Alex Coccia. Hello, happy 2024, or welcome to 2024 to both you and all of our viewers, guys. Hopefully you had a good New Year's Eve. I cannot believe both of our Snapchats have now lined up with Christmas Day and the New Year's Day. How you doing, buddy? How was your New Year's?
Hey, it's been great. Cozy, what's your New Year's resolution? I need to know.
Oh my gosh, I have a lot of them. Me and my wife sat down, we put them out. I've got the stereotypical stuff, right? Like, gotta get healthier. I've had that on there like every single year just to like push it to the next year. And then I have a lot of goals, man. A lot of goals, personal goals, family goals, and stuff for the future of content creating, man. I have a lot. How about you?
I'm hoping to get haircuts more often.
That's a good one. What about Costco less? That's pretty easy goal to hit, though.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? I also want to try and be healthier, and I walk to Costco. So there's that, like...
Two birds, one stone?
Exactly, my man. So I'm getting those steps in. I got myself like one of those smart watches that counts how many steps you're getting so I can get to 10,000 every day. I feel like I've aged 20 years in the last, 6 months.
Dude, wear more turtlenecks. Say names wrong more. Yeah, I've got a list of them. Maybe stream more, which is like, I don't know, having one stream a month or something like that. I did 13 last year or something like that in total. Alex, what are we talking about on your side of the Snapchat?
We're going to be talking about our final rankings for the cards of December 2023. There was a lot of surprises in here, and Cozy, I can't wait to talk about that. We're going to be talking about the best Snap moments of 2023 in terms of Snap as a whole, and just for us as well as individuals, content creators, and as people who love the game. And then finally, we're going to be closing it off with the first mailbag of 2024.
Well, buddy, Planet Hulk season starts tomorrow, and finally, dude, I gotta say, I love when the patch and the season don't come at the same day, right? Because we're gonna have Tuesday be the new card Skarr. Let us have some fun with what I think he's gonna bring, some good evolution to some decks, and then the next Tuesday is going to be the patch. That's the series drops, and then all of probably some pretty significant. We've had some crazy card changes. Who knows? Maybe we get a Loki change. Maybe we get some of the bigger cards. Tuned down just a bit. But new year, man, new us, new Snapchat, and more importantly, new season. Let's start with the season pass card. Get right into it on this New Year's Day, buddy. If you guys don't know, Skarr is a 6 cost. He's 11 power. He did not kill Mufasa, but he is the love child of Caiera and Hulk. His ability is cost 2 less for each of your cards that have 10 or more power. Obviously, these being on the board, not in your hand. That would be absolutely busted. Let's go and jump into, obviously, the cards we think are going to be good. How he's going to serve. Is he just a big static card? Where does he best fit? But as always, man, star ratings. And remember, you can be held to these. So we got to make... This is a tough season, too.
It is a tougher season. I'm going with an easy 4-star here. I think that he can definitely be even stronger. But some of the synergies are a little tricky because of... I think there's some very cognizant, costing that Second Dinner did here with, some of the cards that are going to be supplementing Skarr are very specifically costed where you can't get them all into one deck. And so the ceiling is kind of being pushed down a bit. But how often has cost reduction been absolutely insane in this game? So we simply cannot sleep on cost reduction. I'm a minimum 4-star player here.
Yeah, dude. So I think I've learned my lesson from giving anything. We were even the hottest on Loki and we still weren't even close to what he became. Now, obviously, this isn't Loki, but She-Hulk has long been up there as one of my favorite cards to play. I know that, you have been a huge fan of the High Evo deck that loves the She-Hulk double down, just double up decks in general. We know what that can bring to the table, right? Now, I also know that some cards that counter him are also kind of on the uprise tick as well. But let's just cut it down for what it's worth, right? I love the 4-star evaluation. I give him what you give She-Hulk. It's just a different way that's played out. So how you view She-Hulk is how I view him, which I would say is about a 4.5, which seems very high, but that's mainly because he is truly a plug-and-play card at his finest, right? He is going to need... There's about 30 plus cards that allow him to come a little bit cheaper of cost. And we're going to, kind of start there. But I love any card that can slot into any deck as a big power card because we don't have a lot of those, right?
Yeah, he's kind of the opposite of like very niched down cards, like even Sebastian Shaw, right? We had saw the potential for Sebastian Shaw elevating something like a Silver Surfer, which it did, but it's dead on arrival pretty much everywhere else, right? It doesn't have that universal kind of applicable nature that I think something like a Skarr will. Now, Skarr is going to require some deliberate deck building.
He's still a 6'11" is the way that I look at it, right? So Magneto is a 6'12", right? And I don't know how many times I plug in Magneto into the deck because I'm like, oh man, 12 power. It's just a great final play, right? So let's start with, this is why I think he's just busted, right? Giganto's a 6'14", and you're limited to the left lane. At worst, if Skarr does nothing, he does nothing the whole battle, he's a 6'11", okay? A 4'11" is absolutely premium, great, really good valued stats, right? I mean, it's better than Sentry. It's hard to get Darkhawk there. You have to play a lot. And technically, you either need a good location like Monster Island to pop up, or you have one other card that synergizes with him. 211 is absolutely hilariously silly. And then, of course, a free 011 is downright ridiculous. And that's going to be very hard to probably achieve a 011, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. The fact that he can average as a 2 or 4, and mainly probably we're going to see him come out as a 411 a lot of the times, in conjunction with She-Hulk, is why I give this guy just such a good rating. And it's kind of a card that I'm all about, and one that I'm going to be playing a ton.
I like exactly what you said there, and this is something I think we've come back to multiple times when we try to evaluate cards. There's always going to be we can get the Werewolf by Night to 45 somehow, right? Like there's always those like circumstances where you send Blob over 100, but I think it's so key to think about what the baseline and most common statistical line is for these cards that you can rely on. And you're right, 411, I am happy with that. I am absolutely happy with 411. And that's because you have cards like Shadow King that slot into the 2 slot. Where think about what happens to a collector. You play Shadow King on a collector and then you throw Skarr into another location. Like that is a huge board flip, right? Yep. So I love that 4 stat line because even if you're not like magicking to turn 7 to do all this stuff, that is Skarr coming down as 11 straight up power with also the ability for you to play something else in conjunction with it as well. So I do think that 411 is where I see him being played most often, and anything else is gravy.
And there's a lot of cards that can be cheated out early that will have that 10 premium stat line, and then you can quickly use Skarr's ability, get him out there before it dips down below that, right? We can go through some of our favorites. Before we focus on the cards that allow him to be played early, I always like talking, we kind of always do this with each card that comes out. What are you playing him in? Like, what are you going to be slotting him in first? And for me personally, I think this is now the beginning, and it's going to continue to get better throughout this month. But I think this is back in action. Lockjaw decks are back here ready to go. Little bit of Gamba in those, but I think that this is his best home by far because there's a lot of ways to manipulate cards that have come out since Jane Jaw kind of took a fall. To me, it seems like Lockjaw is the perfect deck for the guy.
Lockjaw will be really interesting. I'm glad you actually brought that out because it was like maybe like 4th down on my list there that I was going to talk about. But I do see it there. And we also have another card coming out, Beta Ray Bill, which could potentially have like an impact on Lockjaw too. So maybe Lockjaw needs a little bit of love given the fact that like it did fall off. Like Lockjaw Thanos, there was a point in time which was absolutely the most like insane deck in Snap. And then they made some changes to Lockjaw, obviously cycling once per turn, etc. But where I plan to play him first is actually going to be with Annihilus. The reason for this is because I see this play where you can do Sentry for Annihilus 5, and you have Skarr as a 4 because Sentry's on the board. And then you have an additional, like, again, Shadow King, even a Hood, plus another 1-drop or whatever. I'm trying to figure out that turn 6. But with Sentry and Nihilus, I feel like there's often opportunities to be creative with what you do on turn 6. I mean, you can even play Nihilus on turn 6 too, right? So that you have those fallback lines. If you play him on turn 6 with Hood, like that's a lot of power. And you've sent over the Void. You have Sentry as a 4/10. You have a Nihilus. You've probably sent over Celine. Maybe not, actually. That's a whole other conversation. But like at the end of the day, I think that there's that like that flexibility of how you can utilize that 2 extra energy you save just to make that last play more impactful. So that's one of the places I want to play him for sure.
Yeah, so, okay, I think Lockjaw is going to do really well because obviously you can have cards that slam out of there quickly, and you can even get Thor up there to a 10 power card from Mjolnir. I'd love that. I think that naturally will be where I am most excited to play him, an archetype that I'd love to play that I haven't been able to play in a good amount of time. The other place, and it was almost spawned from the Lockjaw build that I was cooking up. I was like, well, I loved being able to play, and Hella won't be in the picture in my head, but I loved this deck that I had. I had this Lockjaw with Black Knight deck, and I was like, okay, you can use Black Knight as a token for Lockjaw. Ebony Blade is the perfect card to get out early. The 30 cards I talked about plus earlier, most of them you can't even get out till like turn 5 or 6. Ebony Blade, as we know, can get very high power very quickly. This, to me, seems like the perfect, absolute perfect puzzle piece to already Black Knight decks that are kind of hot. They're definitely doing much better than they were, have more consistency. That would be the other deck that I like them in.
That's 5-head. I actually not considered that. You're right, because that Ebony Blade sits there and it's not susceptible to Shang-Chi. It's not susceptible to pretty much anything at all. And so like it gets to sit there and just do its thing, right? And so like I love that call out there. That's a really good call out. And you're right, it would fit in a deck that naturally has massive cards, right?
Yeah, and you could just play Ebony Blade down, and then you could also play down Ghost Rider that takes the other big card. And this is where I actually think you could get away with getting a free one of these guys, is essentially what you would do is you do have the Ghost Rider, and then you have the actual blade itself. But I have Zabu. This is cutting ahead, but I have Zabu as one of the best synergized cards here because, to your point, Sentry is obviously a big power card. But how many 4 power cards or cost cards can you get to 10, especially the earlier you play them? Darkhawk is a great example, just slamming him out there early. Obviously, Ghost Rider's a 4 cost. I think there's something there with Ebony Blade being discounted down to 3 to allow a 2 cost Skarr, which at that point is insane.
And you could even make the argument that if you're going to be playing 10 cost cards, you might want to have an armor, which might make sense with something like an Atuma. I don't know if that's Hopium or Copium or anything like that, because I like Atuma.
Yeah.
But, Atuma technically reaches that. Namor does, right? But those are very niche situations where maybe a deck like that would work. I could see Atuma working, honestly, because why wouldn't you run armor? But anyways, that's a whole other conversation. But I want to throw one more archetype that I think Loki might be a winner. Again, I'm still trying to pen and paper that turn 6, 7 a little bit. But Sauron and Shuri, okay? Like, if you think about Sauron on turn 3, Typhoid Mary on turn 4, and you have Red Skull on turn 5, that's 2 discounted effects to Skarr. He's now 2 energy. And that's on, and then but unfortunately, you can't Taskmaster and Skarr now. That would require a turn 7, right? So that's where I'm trying to figure out the line. But still, that Skarr is a 2-drop, right? In Shuri Red Skull.
Yeah, dude, I think back when I looked at the new cards from the data mine, I was like, Shuri Sauron needs something now to like, it was known as the best big power deck, right? Then Tribunal beat that out because it can just naturally get higher in 3 lanes, right? Which makes it difficult to beat. And it's such a great balancing act because the Shuri deck trades tech cards for the big power, right? And it needs those tech cards in it. So can Skarr replace another one of those big cards in there? And I do think naturally, we'll get to our next card in a second, the Mama Skarr is going to fit in a lot of these decks and make him just a better card, overall. However, I have him above Sebastian Shaw in my overall rankings, and obviously, like, not Miss Marvel is just a hard thing to beat in general, but I do think he's going to be much more applicable than Shaw, and that alone is going to give him some mass appeal. Now, a couple other decks I wanted to mention, dude, and honestly, might be my first. I said Lockjaw, but you know I love double up decks. Kind of the reason Rocks and Hawks was one of my favorite, and I didn't do Doctor Doom in that build, is I did She-Hulk. I love playing 2 She-Hulks. It's such a satisfying play. As you already know, Moon Girl is one that we talk about quite often on the Snapchat these days. The possibility of finding out a way, Alex, to get out, whether it's, I don't know, Devil Down, it doesn't really matter, but being able to get out the double Skarr and double She-Hulk possibility, or just giving yourself either or. Like, if you get She-Hulk on the leftmost side, it's like you're cooking. But now you can get Skarr or She-Hulk and change up the game plan a little bit if you end up getting these cards together. I think this is going to be a natural huge fit.
I find that Moon Girl decks tend to also be really strong 8-cubers because people will have a hard time tracking what your threat level is. Because they won't know if you have double She-Hulk. They won't know if you have double Skarr, right? It's hard for them to determine what the threat level is of your play with Moon Girl. And that's one of the things I really like about Moon Girl. I used her in Twitch Rivals for that exact reason, right? And it was with She-Hulk, exactly, right? And like this, listen, you're preaching to the converted here, right? I love She-Hulk and I love Moon Girl, and I do think there's going to be some legitimate synergy with Skarr.
Now, I wanted to bring up High Evo, but we'll get to that with probably Caiera. But I think naturally Skarr, I was like waiting for Alex to bring up the High Evo build with Skarr, but because Caiera's rolling that Last couple ones I wanted to throw your way. So Thanos, I was looking at. Thanos is what? He's good at ramping out 5-cost cards, which is good to be able to get off some of these 10-power cards. Naturally, I just was kind of looking at his role in this. We have another card coming out, I think, next month that has another 10-power card. So Thanos might come into that build. But I thought it was kind of cheeky that you could end up doing some type of Thanos build, and even if it had 9 powers, like, I don't know, a Jessica Jones, all right? Hear me out here. You can end up playing Blue Marvel and boosting those up to 10, right? Like, you take them up to 10, and then you're able to then have the free Skarr. But that was kind of cool.
It's actually a super good note and actually a key point of Caiera, which we'll be talking about soon, because Caiera will actually enable Blue Marvel, in my opinion, because it'll protect your stones. Like, it'll protect those smaller cards that will lift the value of Blue Marvel in those types of decks. Because right now, Blue Marvel's getting cut on occasion for greedier plays for the Blob Thanos style decks. And so with that addition of Caiera, of course, is what I'm referring to, Blue Marvel has a much bigger role to play. So it's honestly a great call out. You're right, 100%.
I mean, looking at the earliest cards that you can get out there, I talked about those 30 lists, right? Like, I think the most common of commons, outside of cheating with Jubilee, Lockjaw, Ghost Rider, those kind of methods that we've seen before, those are naturally going to happen. I mean, we've already pointed out a good amount of the decks that can work in them. Darkhawk, to me, just seems like, even with the blob thing, he seems like one of the more obvious ways to just get out a quick 10-power, card out there. Maybe pass with She-Hulk, and you can get them both out there. I'm curious, like, what are the cards that you think are going to best synergize with Skarr? And then we'll talk about the counters.
I mean, for me, like, a lot of my planning has been around Sentry. I think that Annihilus continues to be one of the best packages in the game. Sentry works perfectly with Annihilus. The 5 cost of Annihilus does not necessarily impede a turn 6 with Skarr, because you can play it kind of however you want. But the key thing is that, like, I see Sentry as being 420 power. Like, I see it as a low-key control card, kind of analogous to something like a Nebula, where your opponent is not wanting to have to deal with the location kind of situation of that void is going to come over if I don't do something about it, right? Yep. So, like, a lot of my early planning has been about how can I take what I know is an incredible package in Annihilus and incorporate Skarr while not being too greedy, but, again, trying to maybe... Can I get him to 2 power, right? I don't know, because obviously Annihilus doesn't have that reach. It's Sentry that you're kind of relying on. And if you don't draw into Sentry, what happens? Skarr feels like a bit of a dead draw. So there is inherent risk there. But honestly, like, I don't know, man. I'm excited for the card. I think that it's going to be a solid one.
Yeah, I'll end on the note of, I'm just looking at the ramp options. I'm looking at Wave. I'm looking at Electro. I'm looking at ways that you can utilize these cheaper cards, even Psylocke, Shocker, High Evo, to just push the power of these higher ones. And not to get... Listen, if you have a Monster Island pop up and then you get She-Hulk and stuff, like, great. Take your 2 to 3 or 0 Skarr. But guys, just playing this guy as the premium stat line on value, making decks, like Alex said, with maybe an archetype that you like, is where I see Skarr being pretty damn cool in this game. And definitely one that I'm going to be playing a lot of. When it comes to counters, I think it's pretty obvious here. I mean, by far... No question. I made a tweet on him. I've been playing him. We saw him in the Sarah control deck, right? And that's obviously going to be Mobius. And Mobius, this is his biggest counter by far. He's back on the rise. It shuts him down completely. In fact, kills the card, but he's still 6'11". So if you combine too many cost-reducing things like She-Hulk and all that, this just kills that deck. But Skarr, by himself, he can survive Mobius.
Yeah, so he's slightly underpowered compared to a like a nude regular Hulk, right? Regular Hulk, 6'12". The Sun is a 6'11". And you're right, that's not a huge price to pay for, Mobius came out. But where you probably get punished is, like, you're probably running She-Hulk. You're probably doing all of these things that you want to do to cheat him out. And maybe your turn 6 play doesn't look quite as it should. But that's exactly what Mobius is designed to do. If that's happening to you, like, all things are balanced as they should be, right? That's exactly what Mobius is meant to do. One thing worth knowing, another 3-drop when talking about ramp, though, I don't want to talk about, it's a counter, but it's not, but don't get, I think there's you shouldn't be playing Electro, obviously, with this card, because you can't, like, you reduce the cost and then you're like, okay, what now? I can still only play 1 card. I can play Skarr and Jeff. Cool, I guess. Yep. But Electro is not necessarily a ramp option. So in that case, I'm glad you actually brought up Wave prior, because Wave, I think, is going to be the preferred ramp option for this card. And of course, the Time Stone and Psylocke. Yeah,
absolutely. It was funny, man. The only way I would play, the reason I mentioned Electro is mainly for Celine, and I'll get to that, but I was doing this push down Electro. He's the lowest cost, or the most power in your deck, and then you play a Nihilist the next turn, push him over, and then you like that was the deck I was playing, and that is hot. I don't know if you played
That's
that.
dirty. Yeah, that's disgusting.
We'll wait. You guys have to listen on Alex's side to hear that one, but definitely overall, a little bit of a different week. We can't say, hey, these spotlights are great because the trailer is launching, I believe, I guess potentially on Tuesday. Maybe we can expect it tomorrow. Either way, it's not out yet, and that has me kind of guess that they might change up some stuff. So we can't say, hey, it's coming out with these spotlights for sure. However, what I can tell you, both of us are saying Skarr is about a 4-cost card, and one that you're just not going to regret. I love looking at nerf and buff proof. I think he's probably going to be fine. I think he's going to survive. There's ways to handle him. But ultimately, he's going to be a lot better card. And we're all better people because of Mama, right? Because of Mama, we're all better people. And High Evo is the deck I want to talk about with her and him involved. But next up, Caiera, buddy. Caiera was the one that got data mined that everyone was like, I need to have this card. This is Hulk's lover. They had Skarr together. She is a 3-cost, 4-power card as stands. Again, all this could change. Ongoing, your 1 and 6-cost cards cannot be destroyed. My God, dude. This is like, I kind of wish this card came out a year ago for Zoo decks and for these other decks that really need it. Caiera, to me, I'm seeing it split in half. I'm seeing people like, she's not going to fit in decks, and others are like, this is the next best card in the game. You can't convince me that this is not a great card. This, to me, seems fantastic for the decks that want it.
Cozy, you want a hot take? I'm ready to hot take. This is 5 stars.
Listen, I know that you will absolutely welcome in the receipts when we go and we end up final ranking her. I know you're going to be like, listen, we're doing the final rankings in December, which I think we did okay with. I don't disagree. Unless something happens, this is easy a 4.5-ish up there tech card for me. Because why not? Why would you not put her in your deck? It's like when we looked at Mobius, right? And everything that he countered when he was originally, it was an obvious he was going to be good. This just seems like, it seems so good. And it's funny, like, we'll get to the 6-cost cards, buddy, in a second. Can we just talk about being able to play Sunspot, being able to play your Nebula? Let's talk about your deck, High Evo. This is probably the best card for High Evo I can think of.
It's incredible. You play it on 3, then you Cyclops on 4. Like, and you can play Nebula and Sunspot with absolute, like, full confidence. Those things stay on the board. Of course, there's rogues and there's enchantresses, but who's playing all that greedy stuff outside of all the top players? But yes, of course, right? There's going to be counters, but like as a whole, when have we had a card in Marvel Snap where you've had board-wide effects that aren't incredibly strong? Like Luke Cage just got nerfed because of this exact type of effect, a board-wide effect that completely changes the way your opponent can interact with your board. Huge. It's huge. It's a phenomenal card.
At first, I thought she was going to be, because when they changed all the board-wide effects to single lane, I thought either that was going to happen, but then that felt very off, felt very armory. Like, why not? You know what I mean? Or I thought maybe she gets a little bit better stats, and it's for all cards on the board, your opponent and yours. So, like, that way, it's like you're playing it because you probably built a deck around it, if that makes sense. But then it kind of affects everything on the board, so you can't Shang-Chi your opponent's card. You know what I mean? Like, I thought that was kind of another way to fare her out a bit. Either way, dude, listen. People are they're not fully grasping how good this card is because of the decks that want to or need to. And most importantly, bringing back the importance to 1-cost. We're always saying this. Killmonger has been the card of cards that has just been really what keeps Zoo and 1-cost cards at bay, right? Like he kind of, I would say he cycles in and out of the meta, but more so or not, he's in a deck, right, Alex? Like he's there. The threat of him is there. It's been there for as long as we've been playing Snap. And now this is such a surefire way that if you have priority, which if you're playing 1-cost, you probably do, you just get her out right in time.
Yeah, so it does a lot to really genuinely lift Zoo as an archetype as a whole to protect them from Killmonger. But just all 1-drops benefit from this now. Like, this is a huge pullback in Killmonger, because Killmonger, even in Silver Surfer, you could confidently play Killmonger and just snipe 1-drops that your opponent was relying on. Even Loki players, right? Like the value of Nico and Snowguard, and it would add up to flipping locations on occasion, right, on turn 6 with Killmonger. So I think that the changes actually do negatively hit the decks that use Killmonger the most, and which is obviously Destroy. But it's also worth noting that, like, Caiera is not going to completely elevate zoo to the ceiling because it can't go as vertical as a blob deck can, or it can't go. There's still challenges. It can't do what Shuri does. But if you're talking about winning 3 locations simultaneously and making your opponent have to go vertical, then suddenly Caiera, as a 3 cost, can be played pretty much slotted in anywhere in a deck that's using a lot of inexpensive cards. And then again, you talk about the value of Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel's value goes up because now you know that those 1 cost cards are going to stick, right? So honestly, I'm super excited about the card. It's one of my most anticipated cards of the past little while. I think it's going to be remarkable.
How many times, too, do you have 1 cost on your side on certain decks where, like, you get the Killmonger play yourself? You know what I mean? Like, has that happened where you don't want to kill your own 1 cost, right? Like, maybe you get your Nika to 1/5 and you're like, damn, the price to be paid, right? But it's worth it because you can counter. Caiera protects your own 1 cost at that, too. So, like, it's funny what it's doing for that. Maybe we see Ultron come back a little bit better because you have a way now to really, certify protect your Ultron drones. But on the 6 cost way, I mean, we were jumping up and down about Ebony Blade because we had the conversation a couple weeks ago, Alex, and you guys would know for listeners why Ebony Blade's good is there's not a lot of cards out there that you can play safely and be like, that lane's good. You know what I mean? And Ebony Blade can't be Shang-Chi. The fact that you gain that ability outside of now Enchantress, things like that, right? Like, you could just play your big power card and just be like, it's fine. It's good, right?
I actually had this thought of, like, does Shang-Chi, like, now is it just over nerfed? Like, you nerf Shang-Chi to only affect 10 power cards and you bring out Caiera, like, you have to keep kicking him while he's down. He's actually making a bit of a comeback in the meta, right? As he should. Like, it's a very important card to the game as a whole. But this effect is crazy. Like, it's so unbelievably strong. And it makes me wonder if Shang-Chi is just going to completely disappear. Because, like, what are you doing? Like, yeah, like, of course, like, you can still, I mean, you'll still be able to Shang-Chi a Darkhawk, by the way, because it's 4 cost, right? It's just one of those things where, like, the card is going to allow you to cheat out, say, a She-Hulk. Like, there's situations where you're like, okay, I have She-Hulk. I ended up floating all this energy because I didn't have a play. I could play it out, but I don't want to play She-Hulk because I want to skip to turn 6 and all that type of stuff. But you know what? Boom, drop it. It's protected by Caiera. Perfect, right? There's nothing wrong with that. So I think there's a lot of, like, flexibility around the way this can be utilized.
Yeah, like the raft, or like just like even again going back to why I think Lockjaw could be cool. It's like you get that Magneto, you're like, awesome. But man, I have seen people lose in even tournaments where like that Magneto's just flying out there for the Lockjaw lane, and your opponent's just gonna wait. And they're gonna wait and they'll kill it at the end, and then that huge swing was an easy lane to flip. You were counting on it, game over. Caiera protects that. And she's a good card to come out of Lockjaw. If she comes out, you're like, okay, cool, free play. Now I can do my other things that I want to do in the deck. The reason I compare her to Mobius and why I love your 5-star rating, and I'm going to give her like a 4.5, is oftentimes with Mobius, it's not even about what he's actually doing, which is nice. You know, like you can play your whatever cost-effective cards with more confidence. Your opponent can't. But man, when I've been playing Mobius lately, my snap conditions, some of them where I go all in on the 8-cuber, is location-based. And let's take a moment. Hey, guess what? Death Domain. I'm snapping for 8 cubes on Death Domain for Caiera. You can play 1 and 6 cost cards into Death Domain. I mean, Danger Room. Safely. You know that, and you know the advantage that that brings. And there's more locations than one that destroy on effect. There's a lot of them, in fact. Those can be won by like 1 power point at times.
There's always flexibility that is often like underappreciated with locations. We always talk about card synergy, deck synergy, and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, one thing that is so consistent in Marvel Snap is you're going to get a location that's going to punch you square in the groin. It's always going to be that way. But sometimes you're on the blessed side where you get a location that's absolutely perfect. You have Darkhawk in your hand and Subterranean comes rolling out. You don't want to snap right away because you don't want to reveal it, right? But you know, you're like, I got this now, right? I got this. Yeah. And I think Caiera is going to be the same way to many regards there. Now, one thing I want to mention, which is kind of interesting from a standpoint of like how the card's designed, I think that the 3 cost is very deliberate.
Yeah.
Because it prevents you from playing Caiera on curve with Electro or Wave, which reduces the number of 6 drops you can get on the board. That is a very natural pullback effect, and that's why I really like your Lockjaw idea, Cozy.
Yeah, you're right there. And like on top of that, it's so funny because if you're playing her deck, you need to plan out the priority because we can go. Listen, guys, we're filming this on New Year's Eve, so we're doing, you know, we got the double crown. We were talking and laughing about this of the Snapchat being lined up with this. There's hours that we can spend on this card. Luckily, we're going to talk about it whenever she comes out into more extent. But one of those, and moving to our next card, let's talk about Hercules. Hercules is, there's a couple Marvel characters that, you know, not inspired, but they're from our lives history, right? Santa, funny enough, is actually a Marvel character. But Hercules. Now, I've been waiting for this guy to come out. And I have to say, I'm a little disappointed. I'm a little disappointed, but I do think there's some kind of cool things you can do with him. I think he's the worst card of the month. And I think this is a good point to say this month is so fun because it legit gives every archetype a sprinkle of something different. And Hercules is for Move. Now, Move is always just getting the bottom of the scraps, I feel like, of the worst card of the month coming out for it. But guys, Hercules is a 4-cost 6-power card. The first time another card moves here each turn, which is the biggest word on there, move it to another location. Listen, I just gotta say, man, those that have mastered move decks, they're probably pretty pumped about it. I think this is a big brain card. For the majority of the people, I think it's gonna not be that great, though.
No, I don't think so either. My question was like, can Hercules go the distance, as Michael Bolton once said? And I don't think he can. I don't think he can. But at the same time, like, there's something to be said about like, okay, Kraven and Hercules. You know, Hercules being able to bounce things back into Kraven, but then like that's totally unreliable. Like, so I was like, okay, what do I make? How do I make a deck with Hercules work? Oh man, I think this is a 2-star card. I just don't see it. Like, it's just so, it feels unreliable. It does feel like a counter to Magneto, though, because like Magneto can pull something and bounces it back out. Arrow might get negatively impacted by Hercules, but then again, it has to be moved to Hercules' location, so you just play around that anyway. So I just don't feel like this is the card that Move needed, right?
We are. This is going to be one that we talk more heavily on, I think, when he comes out. Here are my two thoughts between him. He's somewhere between Silk and Spider-Man 2099, right? So when Silk came out, everyone's like, who cares? It's not reliable. And then we were able to come up with some really cool packages, and we made Silky Smooth work, right? And then Silk was insane. And hear me out. I think there is going to be some really cool Kraven stuff, to your point. I think you can use Kraven, Human Torch, Hell Dude. I mean, I don't think people quite understand. We're talking about cheating out 10-power cards. Yo, guess who can get 10 power each turn? Each turn. You know who can get the 10 power pretty easy is Vulture. Getting this guy moving over with Iron Fist and Nico now. He moves yet again immediately. He's a 13 power card. Vulture immediately is a 13 power card because of Hercules. It's once per turn, so that has me a bit sad, but I think it now makes you respect some big move plays via Heimdall. To where I don't want to write him off. I think at top levels of play, though, he'll be better than we think. Ultimately, though, maybe the worst card. So maybe 2.5. Here's my prediction. My bold prediction, Alex, is that 2099 gets some type of an OTA to make him better when Hercules comes out.
That wouldn't surprise me, right? It wouldn't surprise me at all. But like, I don't know, man. I think Hercules is hurting. And even with Heimdall, like, it's going to require like the order of cards to enter his location is going to determine which card gets pushed out again, right? And so like, that's hard to manage, man. That is like not even 5. That's like 8-head gameplay. Like, that is so hard, man. I feel for the move players out there, and I tell you, when I'm in Conquest, I'm against the move player. I'm like, this is gonna be the guy to beat me, right?
Yeah,
because like they all have their golded out deck. Everything's inked. It's all beautiful because it's all they play, and they absolutely crush with it. I don't think this is what it needs. But maybe an OTA or patch change to the supporting cards will make all the difference.
The amount of times, like every now and then, like a Blue Moon, I play that all gold deck move player, and I'm like, scrub, I got this guy. He wrecks me. I then proceed to make a move deck because I'm like, I can do it too. And then I'm like, dude, this guy's playing another Marvel Snap that I'm currently playing. So absolutely, I think the respect is going to be tough. I think Dagger is a great card that can also work with Hercules. Like, there's going to be cards that can work, but ultimately we'll have to see. The last thing I want to say about it is I do think you brought up Magneto. It's like, hey, could you end up doing a Juggernaut into hopefully a Kingpin lane, and then if it bounces into Hercules, he puts it into that lane? We have to see how this stuff works in theory, I don't know.
A cool idea. I mean, is it Kingpin's time? Probably not. Copium. I don't think it's Kingpin time yet.
Dude, I've been had that New Year copium heavy and strong, buddy. So Alex, that brings us to probably I would say a lot of people's most anticipated or most like fun. They can't wait to see him. I know when I saw his text, I saw his cost, I was like, this has me written all over it, man. Combo City Grandmaster. 2 cost, guys. 0 power card. On reveal, move one of your other on reveal cards at the location you play Grandmaster to the middle location. The ability happens again. Its ability happens again. Holy smokes, man. Holy smokes. That's insane. First of all, let's just like get it down to the bare basics. This is probably going to be a pretty busted card in the right decks.
You know what though? That middle location, it's restrictive. 2 stars. Middle location. You can't play middle location all the time. I'm kidding. That's a reference to my missed call on the Miss Marvel that I'm still.
Oh, that's
sad
right.
about.
I was like, dude, you can't be believing this again. I was like, he's doubling down. He's doubling down.
No. This is a 4-star card for sure. For sure. It has to be. I mean, it has the Adam Warlock stat line, which kind of scares me, but it's basically half the cost of absorbing, man. You do have the restriction of the middle location, but obviously that's not as impactful as I once thought it was. So that's been corrected. I think it's going to be a damn good card, man. Like, it's just, is it basically a 2-power mini Wong?
Yeah, so it mini Wong. Yeah, it's or like baby Odin mini Wong. What I think it is, so at its core, right? I'm gonna give him a probably a 4 low side, 5 upside. Like I think this could be the card of the month too. He has that potential of big brain plays, of unexpected things happening, especially if you have a lot of cards that can use it and utilize it, and then maybe you have like 1 powerful on reveal on each lane, and your opponent has to guess, crap, what if they have Grandmaster and he can reactivate that Arnim Zola he cheated out, or whatever it ends up being, right? Outside the cool combos, Alex, let's just talk like pure basic good cards, man. Listen, activating things like Gamora again, White Tiger, man. White Tiger is such a good card that is simply playing her for the value and then being able to re-trigger that is a good play. What are some on reveals that you really like?
I mean, the on reveals that I really like are the ones you actually just mentioned, right? But like the question I've asked myself is like, yeah, White Tiger is good, but at the same time, it's like, wouldn't you just, is it not better just to do the traditional line of like Wong, White Tiger, Odin? Like, does that not just kind of fill the board better? Like I'm just trying to understand something because, okay, first of all, the text of Grandmaster is amongst the most confusing we've ever had.
It's up there, yeah.
Right? I think one thing that holds it back is that obviously it's going to take a random on reveal card. And the thing that makes Werewolf by Night so good is that there's so many on reveals that are good. But to the same extent, now if you have an Iceman on your board and you're like, hit that White Tiger, now it's a 50-50. So there's some unreliability to that extent. So to some degree, you could have some more consistency with the classic Wong, Odin, White Tiger thing. I've been thinking about this card and I've been all over the place with it because I think the actual play pattern of it is a little more restrictive than might be given first credit. But there's nothing to be said. Like, yeah, you could replay something like you played an Ironheart on curve and you bring the Ironheart back and rip it, or you even move, you play Wong center. Like if you play Ironheart on the right, you play Wong in the center to create space, and then you play the Grandmaster there. It brings the card over, redoes its on reveal, brings another card over, brings its on reveal again. That could be really cool. Like think about what Wong would do with Grandmaster.
So that's where I think this is going to be a top tier card. Like, and I'm going to get to it in a second. We've seen what players and what we have done even with cards that have like a low side. He has so much upside that I think that there's enough decks and creativity, and most importantly, in Marvel Snap, we've seen this time and time again. Blob is great because he's unpredictable, and I think Grandmaster is unpredictable. You can get a Heimdall out early in a move deck, and you can play him legit twice. You can move him. Yes, that left lane's already stacked. Again, it's like 8-head stuff at this point. But even going to, let's say, a Destroy deck, man, there's ways to where Venom is the only card left in said lane, and maybe you want to push Venom back in the middle for whatever reason, right? I think there are interesting combos that people are going to come up with that Grandmaster opens a whole new door and kind of fits really well in these Ravonna, which obviously he has synergy with. He's a 2-0 Mr. Negative, even Jane Jaw, that whole list, he can work in that realm. But I also think he can just work as a very cool surprise card, combo card, man. Getting Goliath somehow ramped out, re-triggered, and you can kill with it, send it in the middle, kill with it again. You can do that with Valkyrie. Send everything to 3, then do it again. Send everything to 3. Shang-Chi, kill a big card. There's another big card in the middle, playing for 2. Shang-Chi's played for 2 costs in the middle, and then you do something else. That is where I think he's got the 4 to 4.5 star quality.
He also dodges Cosmo, which is kind of notable. Like if Cosmo's in right or left location, right, he'll pull a card out and then re-trigger the on-reveal effect, which it just Cosmo doesn't matter there from that perspective. So now we have a couple ways to counter. You have the Echo gameplay, which I'm still one of the only believers out there. They just don't play the Cosmo on top of Echo, or they just play the Cosmo on top of Echo because Echo's actually invisible. But I think that this is also low-key a way to dance around Cosmo, which is pretty cool as well for very inexpensive cost.
I mean, bro, look at just scrolling down here. Brood, being able to reactivate a Brood on a Silver Surfer turn and getting 2 lanes of Brood, like, out of nowhere. I feel like Ghost Rider, right? You cheat out a big card. Since Ghost Rider in the middle, he could do one more big card, getting that Hella back. Doesn't it seem like he could be a ticket to bringing more consistency and or just cheeky things that we have not been able to see because Odin costs too much and Wong is the most like take me or I win type of card?
Oh, 100%. Wong is very much like, am I actually going to stay into this game because they're sitting on a Wong and I don't have an answer, right? Like that's like, do you ever want to man fight Wong? Usually not, right? But with Grandmaster, there's a lot of chances that you just might not see him coming. And I like the idea of using him with Silver Surfer because if you think about it, Silver Surfer decks are currently experimenting with Maximus still. And if you play Sarah on turn 5, Grandmaster represents a 50% discount to 1 cost. So suddenly you can play Grandmaster, bring over, your Killmonger, or even you can play Silver Surfer, then Grandmaster, hit that, and then play your Maximus later. And all of a sudden, like, you still have energy left over for another 3-drop. Like, it's crazy because, like, those, now you have, instead of doing like 3 3-drops, you do 2 3-drops and 2 2-drops. It's 4 cards on turn 6. Could be like literally insane, especially in a deck, which you're right, all the on reveals are generally useful.
There's literally so much we could talk about them. We could keep going, but I've got to say this is probably my most exciting card of the month. Caiera is like the most like blanket. I think just like a great card to have in decks. Grandmaster for me is the top of the list of like, I cannot wait to do like a subathon when the guy comes out. However, where I think he's going to work and the next card we can go to is going to be, oh man, Beta Ray Bill. I think Grandmaster re-triggering Mjolnir is really cool, but also we have Beta Ray Bill, who is going to naturally fit into Jane Jaw. It almost feels like Lockjaw, Jane Jaw. This is going to be the month of resurgence for it. He's a 4-cost, 5-power card at the time. On reveal, he shuffles Stormbreaker into your deck, and Stormbreaker doubles Beta Ray Bill's power, and Stormbreaker also has 1 power. It's like a little bit of a better Mjolnir and Thor, but he's a tad bit more expensive. We have seen these cards before, Alex. We've seen the Dawkin. We've seen Sebastian Shaw, the ones where you can manipulate power to get even bigger power. It's not hard to get this power, to get them kind of rised up in their overall net worth. He just kind of fits in with everything we've already been talking about today.
I'm kind of concerned about Beta Ray Bill, honestly. My star rating's a little low. I'm going 2 on Beta Ray. I know. Listen, if you disagree, I'm here for it. My concern is that he's going to be very dependent on how good Lockjaw ends up being. And so if Lockjaw itself doesn't pan out to be meta defining or like competitive or anything like that, which I think there's a good chance it will be, Beta Ray Bill, I don't think competes in many other different archetypes. I think it's a little more niche than might have been originally anticipated. However, it's not to say that it can't be good, because it can be good. But I'm a little more hesitant because it takes me back to Sebastian Shaw, where like the supporting cards of Beta Ray Bill outside of Lockjaw naturally, like, are we going back to Okoye Nakia again? Like it's just like they're just not nearly as strong as some of the other pieces that could be supporting other cards in the same archetype.
I think for me, it's Lockjaw is so different than it once was because of the cards that have come out in the game. So with Beta Ray Bill, like we've got like Nikos now that can kill a card and draw 2. And it's allowing us to get access to things like Stormbreaker, or you do hope for the roll, or you just have Jane Jaw on the deck and you can play it out naturally on curve. We already know 410, do nothing to him, and 410 is the stat line you're trying to get. That's a killer stat line. Jane Jaw, the thing that people don't talk about enough with Jane Jaw is it's either a really good cube deck or really bad. If you play down Jane on 5, a good player is going to retreat a lot of the time. They do the math, they add the math. This doesn't surprise anybody if you use Jane. Using Nico to draw, things like that, I think is interesting. And the cards we've already talked about and the way we want to cheat out big power early for the Skarrs, for Caiera, for protection, I think he just kind of fits into that mold. 2 seems low. I'm going to give him probably a 3 to 3.5. But I do think Thor is not a super popular card ever. He's never been super popular because of this whole metric, right? That to me is the best. When Thor is the best is when you're playing Conquest. You don't have to play Jane because you top deck Mjolnir. and then you keep your opponent on their feet, and you already have the other cards you need. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But I also had this thought of like, I wonder if they changed Thor. Like, I actually wonder if Thor gets OTA or patched. And the reason why I say this is because if you think about like the way this deck would play, you have Lockjaw 3, Thor's already a 3, and then you have Beta Ray Bill 4, Jane Foster 5. It's like there's this overlap that it's not smooth. And I wonder if, I mean, Thor's largely underplayed, right? It would not surprise me if a change to Thor comes. I don't even know what the change would be to make this card make more sense, because they kind of feel like they're occupying the same lane, don't they? Don't they kind of feel like they're occupying the same lane? Am I wrong?
Yes, but in those decks, you're kind of already going like guns ablazing, throwing things in Lockjaw, snapping on the Jubilee into Lockjaw. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it doesn't play out in a good curve deck, which is, again, why Thor isn't really played all that much. Like, you would think with Thor's stats, he'd just be in Surfer. You know what I mean? But I totally get your point here. We're going to have to see how Beta is, but I know in the comments, there's a lot of love for him as a character altogether. Now, lastly, Alex, this brings us to our last card of the month. Miek. Man, Miek, Mike. He's been called a lot of names. This is the new Dak and Doc in here. One of my favorite just movies is Thor Ragnarok. He's obviously really good in that. A 1-1, my friends. 1-1 for discard. Discard is going to get some major love between now and the next couple months. After each turn, if you discarded any cards, you're going to gain +1 power to Miek for each of those discarded. And Miek is going to move, which is such a crazy little extra effect there. Now, we talked about it where I think we looked in the future of one of the cards coming out of ramping into discard. And I was like, why are you trying to do that? You have to remember, like, why are you playing a move discard? What are you trying to accomplish here? What are you ranking our friend here?
I'm going to be conservative on 3 stars, but I can see Miek actually being 4 stars. However, he's a 1 star in pretty much anything other than some sort of discard shell, like a very niched down card, so very Selene-esque, where it's like you're not playing this in like random decks. It doesn't have the universal appeal. However, 1 power per discard is actually a lot. Like, are you satisfied with Miek being a 1-4? Like, that's the question, because like I actually think we're discarding less than we used to. Like, we're not doing the Modok Hella stuff as common. Black Knight is good and has very targeted discard, so I think that holds Miek down a little bit. But if Hella discard can make the argument for something like a Miek and just blowing up hands again, I mean, maybe it's enough. Like, maybe he gets to like 6 power, honestly, and that's 1/6 is nothing to scoff at.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think obviously we have so many good cards coming out, and it's not that Miek is bad necessarily. It's I look at him. He is a okay. First of all, discard does not have a true 1 cost really all the time that belongs in the deck. So it's nice to be able to have something to play and to make work into that build. It brings unpredictability. Like, dude, if there was still dependable discard with Chavez, oh man, I would love Miek, right? Because then you could really calculate what you're trying to do, and then you have that extra little bit of unpredictableness that Miek would bring, moving to a lane, and that opponent's like, okay, where's that going? We know Storm is in discard decks all the time. Shut down a lane and fill up a lane and get Miek to go over to that Storm lane and win. You know, there's some cool things you can do with Miek there. He can get to restricted locations, which I think outside of Wolverine, discard does struggle with. Right? I don't know about you, but you see a Sanctum Sanctorum, you're kind of like, I'm screwed. He, to me, seems like a worse Morbius, but you get to play him for 1. Yeah, dude, he's super pigeonholed. I think if you're big on discard, celebrate. I would focus on the discard cards coming out in with the Black Order season, and then get Miek as a complement card to that. There's better cards this season. I agree. I think he's kind of pigeonholed, but he's decent in the deck.
It's also notable, I believe as of right now, he's Series 4. So that does make a difference,
like that.
Right?
I like that a lot. I think then just wait. Get him on tokens when you get the other discard stuff.
Yeah, and then one final thing I want to mention about Miek. First of all, I love the character. Korg's one of my favorite characters in the MCU. Yeah. Every time I see Korg, I'm actually so happy. But what I will say is as well is, like, you talk about accessing a location that you can't access. He also control you because he'll just move out of the location if you happen to discard something else after, right? There's an element of a lack of control with Miek, which I think is kind of interesting. So that's also worth noting. But honestly, it's a card that needs to exist for discard, because you're right. We've been using Nebula in discard for a while to some degree, right? Obviously, we're using Black Knight now, but I think Miek has a role to play.
I'll end on it with this. I think, dude, there will be a deck. I think it's her name's Proxima Midnight, where you're going to discard her and she flies to a random location. Mark my words, there's going to be dude, this is going to be so chaos in like March or something. there's going to be a Modok play on Wong where you've got Miek on the board and you have the swarms in your hand. And you know how it like just does that animation like crazy and you just have, it has to do the fast forward effect. Miek's going to get to like 18 power and then just get to one lane and seal it off, dude. Because he gets a power point, right? Per card discarded?
Yeah, but I think he might only move once. Because like I think he gets the
Let's
power
see.
and then just shifts.
For each and moves, which is even more fun. He gets like 16 power and then he just goes boop and goes to a lane to win it.
Because if he moved back and forth, hold on, then you just play Craven on two, not even
I don't think
Morbius
he moves
anymore.
back. I think it's a one move thing and he gets the power. Either way, though, you know what I mean? Like that, this deck is kind of one of those silly decks that can win. But like if you do this with like Dawkin or Swarm and then you just like have Mobius on one lane and you're just like, all right, Miek, go to the left, baby. And if that's the case, then Miek ends up being broken and really good and kind of a Gamba card that you can plan out. We have to see. We're going to have to test these out when they're out. That's why it's so tough. But either way, man, I would say this could have been a 2-hour episode. And if it was not on a holiday, me and you would have just been able to go to town. But I could confidently say, looking at it, there's some obvious, like, you got to love them. Let's end with this. Put them out in order. What are your favorites, starting from the top?
Oh, it's Caiera for sure.
Okay.
Number one. Grandmaster, number two. I mean, Grandmaster, I think, might get outperformed by Skarr. I wouldn't be surprised if Skarr would ultimately was better than Grandmaster. That wouldn't surprise me. I'm going to go with Miek, then Hercules at the bottom, unfortunately for me.
Yeah, I think so. I think Skarr or Caiera, then Skarr. I agree with that. However, I think those are like the value plays, whereas I think Grandmaster, those that play the deck like me, is easily my number one. Like who I'm like excited to play into my Ravona builds and stuff like that. And then working down, I would probably go. Yeah, probably. It's right up there with probably Beta, then Miek, then Hercules for myself. But we're gonna. Have
I forgot Beta exists. I didn't even rank Beta. Yeah, Beta's above Hercules, probably under Miek for me.
Yeah. Either way, good month if you look compared to December, where it was a good month, but kind of there was no like. I don't know. I think all these are exciting. Where more exciting than the ones in December.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of flavor here, and I think December had a lot of flavor too. And we'll be talking about that very shortly.
Yeah, we will. So, guys, we will reevaluate the spotlights and everything once we have confirmation on that. Hopefully, you guys enjoy your New Year's Day, recover from your hangovers, or just watch a lot of good college football. Whatever you might be doing. Alex, thank you for another great Snapchat. We're heading over there. Guys, go check it out on Alex's channel. We're talking about the final rankings of every card, roasting me and Alex on our previous rankings, the best snap moments of 2023 in the Snapchat mailbag. Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll see you on the next Snapchat episode. Happy snapping.